So, in the end, will the sun be to blame for destroying our planet? Or how about a huge meteorite? Or some kind of disease? Probably not. It seems that life will disappear for a very unexpected reason. Humans, animals, insects, fish, and most microbes will be wiped off the face of the Earth because of oxygen, or more precisely, because of its absence. Recent research has shown that the number of freshwater reservoirs with very low or no oxygen levels in coastal areas is increasing worldwide. Over the past 65 years, 4 times more oxygen-deficient waters have appeared in the world's oceans. What does it all mean? It's likely that life on Earth will vanish much sooner than the sun's energies dries up all the oceans. The end is likely to come in a little more than 1 billion years. But this doesn't mean that the planet will disappear too. The period when Earth is filled with oxygen will make up just about 20 to 30% of the total lifespan of the planet. So we're just temporary guests here. Just think how long that is, 1 billion years. The first Homo sapiens appeared only about 300,000 years ago. That is, the entire history of humanity occupies less than 500,000 years. So relax. 1 billion years won't pass very fast. By that time, humans won't be on Earth anymore. We might master space travel and find a new planet in the vast depths of space. But why can we lose air? As the sun heats up, the planet gets warmer and warmer, and this heat breaks down carbon dioxide, the gas which is necessary for all plants to photosynthesize. Without carbon dioxide, they can't produce oxygen. With a drop in carbon dioxide levels, the methane content will increase, and this gas is quite harmful to us. Now, this all sounds logical, but this is a secondary reason for the lack of oxygen. The real problem is something else entirely. As the sun becomes brighter, it will begin to heat rocks on Earth, such as granite and basalt. These rocks will start to break down faster. When they collapse, they take carbon dioxide from the air, which warms our planet. If there's less carbon dioxide in the air, Earth should become colder. But there's a problem. The sun will shine more, and its heat will outweigh this cooling effect. So even if rocks take away carbon dioxide, the sun will blaze so much that Earth will still become extremely hot. Next, when the sun shines more intensely, it, along with other natural factors, contributes to the breakdown of granite and basalt. These rocks mix with carbon dioxide and water to make carbonates, which go deep into the Earth. This takes carbon dioxide out of the air, which means plants can't make as much oxygen because they need carbon dioxide to do that. Besides, volcanoes release gases, which also reduce the amount of oxygen in the air. So the sun, by destroying rocks, affects what happens inside Earth and controls how much oxygen there will be in the air. In about 1 billion years, the sun will become so bright that no rocks will be able to save Earth from its heat, and the escaping gases will halt photosynthesis and oxygen production. And then, our planet will return to the state it was in about 2.4 billion years ago, to the time when the Great Oxidation event began. And this event was much more important than, say, the first Olympic Games or the appearance of humans on the planet. Billions of years ago, there was almost no oxygen on Earth. Instead, there was a soup of gases, such as nitrogen, ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide, and others. Yes, we have these gases in the atmosphere today, but there used to be a lot more of them in the past. It was difficult for any form of life to originate in such conditions. But after some struggle, it succeeded. At first, Earth was inhabited by the simplest bacteria, including cyanobacteria. They learned how to make oxygen using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. These bacteria worked for millions and billions of years and made so much oxygen that it began to accumulate in the air. This was what we now call the Great Oxidation event. It was like a great celebration of life, because with oxygen, new living beings could appear. But by the way, cyanobacteria didn't learn photosynthesis because they were like, oh, let's make oxygen, it's so cool. No, oxygen was just a byproduct. Cyanobacteria wanted only one thing, to get as much energy as possible. And for this, they learned photosynthesis. It helped them store energy using sunlight. They used special pigments to absorb light, and the result of this process was the release of oxygen. This had been going on for hundreds of millions of years, and then, at some point, they made too much oxygen. This oxygen started to spoil other gases that had been there before. For example, it ate a lot of methane. Because of this, Earth cooled down a bit, and the Ice Age began. But that's another story. In short, in 1 billion years, we risk going back to that difficult time. But let's hope that we'll manage to move to another planet on our spaceships or come up with some other solution. And what'll happen to our home planet next? Will new life be able to originate there without so much oxygen? Well, it's possible, but it'll be much more difficult. This will require another source of energy besides the sun. It can be, for example, hydrothermal vents. And by the way, there are ecosystems on Earth that use this type of energy. You can find one of them in the Mohole cave in Romania. Imagine a place where there's little oxygen. It's dark. The sun's rays don't reach there. Over millions of years of evolution, a unique and slightly creepy life has developed in this cave. It was first discovered in 1986, and scientists are still exploring this place. The entrance to the cave is just a small hole in the ground. A narrow tunnel goes deep underground. Inside the cave, the air is filled with hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, and there's half as much oxygen there as on the surface. A human can't stay there without a special mask. But for local forms of life, this is home, and they feel great there. There are several dozen species living in the cave, and many of them aren't found anywhere else on Earth. Here you can see strange little monsters, white snails, white spiders, centipedes with long whiskers, transparent shrimp, and even unknown species of leeches. Since there's no light in the cave, all these creatures don't need eyes. They're blind, but they have long sensitive antennae and paws that allows them to navigate in the space. They also have no colored pigment, so all these bugs and spiders are either white or transparent. But if there's so little oxygen there, and nobody does photosynthesis, then how does all this life survive? It's all thanks to the unique bacteria autotrophs. They absorb carbon dioxide and produce nutrients. These bacteria are food for other organisms, and those, in turn, become food for larger creatures. So a whole food chain has been built in the cave, which provides all the inhabitants with food. Evolution has created a unique ecosystem that exists separately from the rest of the world. It's like a small universe that has developed according to its own rules. However, this universe is not expanding, because all living beings here can't live away from hydrothermal vents and autotrophs. Otherwise, where would they get their energy from? But let's imagine that the sun cools down, almost all the oxygen disappears, and the entire planet gets covered with hydrothermal vents. It's dark, and the air is filled with methane, CO2, and other substances. And somehow, life begins. Even people appear at one point. What would they look like? Pale, thin, and blind creatures with very long arms that help them navigate in space. They have pets, large centipedes or cockroaches that move silently on the ground. People are also quiet because they don't have lungs filled with air to scream. There's silence in the world. People communicate through touch. No one travels. Everyone lives separately next to their hydrothermal source. The whole world has turned into a horror movie in 1 billion years.
It's one small step for man, giant leap for mankind.
In the late 1950s, everyone was captivated by space exploration. But there was a group of rebels who wondered not what's out there, but what's down there. This team called themselves the American Miscellaneous Society. Yes, that's their real name. And they started one of the biggest projects ever, Project Mohole. Joyful and determined, they had no idea what a nightmare they started. First, let's understand what the project was about. You probably know that Earth is like a giant onion. If you cut it in half, you'd see it's made of layers. Each one is different from the next. The crust is what we all stand on. It's incredibly thin, like the skin of an apple. It's made of tectonic plates, almost like puzzle pieces, and they float on the layer beneath. That layer is the mantle. It's mostly solid, made of rock, but these rocks flow and move very slowly, just a little bit over thousands of years. They're also incredibly hot, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit, so it's a bunch of scorching stones moving around like caramel syrup. And when the mantle moves, the tectonic plates above move as well. Usually, this movement is slow and harmless. We don't even notice it. But sometimes they can bump into each other, get stuck, and so on. And when they do, they send such horrifying vibrations through the ground that they're hard not to notice. These vibrations are called seismic waves. In 1909, a Croatian scientist, Andrija Mohorovičić, noticed something weird. Turns out, at a certain depth, seismic waves suddenly speed up. He didn't yet realize that he stumbled upon a boundary between the crust and the mantle. It became known as the Mohole boundary. Now try to guess what the Project Mohole guys decided to do. It was during a meeting of the National Science Foundation. Everyone was discussing current scientific progress. Suddenly, Walter Munk, a geophysicist and oceanographer, casually threw out a take that shocked the room. Why not drill all the way down to the mantle? His idea was outrageous. Drill through the ocean floor, deep into the planet's skin, reach the Mohole, and see what it's all about. Never mind the fact that the ocean is crazy deep with crushing temperatures and violent currents. Super bold, but not entirely out of nowhere. If we start from the ocean floor, the Mohole lies just about 3 to 6 miles below it. It's much easier than starting from land. That would require digging from 10 to 60 miles deep. That made the oceans the best bet for reaching it. Munk wasn't the only one. Harry Hess, one of his colleagues, was just as excited about the time. At the time, people didn't know much about plate tectonics. Hess was one of the founders of that theory, believing that the world is made up of giant moving plates. To him, it was great. Drilling to the mantle would give him evidence to prove that theory. They became a team and found more like-minded scientists. They combined the most brilliant minds in earth science: Roger Revelle, Maurice Ewing, and Arthur Maxwell. They called themselves miscellaneous because there were all sorts of scientists in the team. Poor guys didn't know that their playful name would later come back to haunt them. But the NSF was dumbfounded by their idea at first and rejected it, because duh, it would be a nightmare to pull off. So our team secured $50,000 just to make a plan. Then they presented the official banner. Luckily, science was on the rise, and there were rumors about other countries trying their own deep drilling projects. So the AMS got the green light this time. The plan consisted of 3 phases. Phase 1. Do a drilling test. Check how things are going. Phase 2. Build an intermediate drilling vessel. Phase 3. Keep going until they reach the Mohole. And they got a funding of a whopping $2.5 million. And finally, in March and April 1961, the project finally began. Phase 1 took place off the coast of Guadalupe Island, Mexico. They used a converted barge called Cus-1 and some insane brain moves to make it work. Originally, Cus-1 was made for drilling oil offshore. It was one of the best things we had for drilling in deep water. But a catch was that it could only go a few hundred feet down. And remember, we need at least 3 miles. The team had to come up with something revolutionary: dynamic positioning. It's a tech that allowed the ship to stay perfectly still in the middle of the ocean, even without an anchor. It worked like this. They dropped 6 buoys into the water, forming a circle around the ship. These buoys sent underwater echoes to help the ship understand where it's located. Using motors and a joystick, the crew could keep Cus-1 right in the center of the circle. And surprisingly, they started making progress. Even though ocean drilling is incredibly hard, they drilled through thick layers of sediment and reached an astonishing 600 feet below the seafloor, about 2 Statues of Liberty. And the seafloor itself was almost 12,000 feet deep. This was just the beginning. Deep down, they stumbled upon tons of basalt, a type of volcanic rock. It doesn't surprise us now, but for that time, this achievement was groundbreaking. Turns out they got through Miocene age sediments, rocks formed millions of years ago. This discovery told us so much about the history of our planet. Now the entire world held its breath. Even the famous writer John Steinbeck, the author of East of Eden and The Grapes of Wrath, got caught up in the excitement. He joined the project and wrote a dramatic article about it for Life magazine. He wrote that we knew less about the ocean floor than we knew about the moon. That line stuck. The biggest surprise was that President John F. Kennedy sent a telegram congratulating the team. It's like the space race turned into inner space, and for a brief moment, it looked like they just might do it. But years later, Walter Munk said that the very success of Phase 1 doomed the project. The early triumph raised expectations sky high. From the start, the miscellaneousness of this society led to tons of disagreements, logistical hurdles, and the costs just kept rising. When the NSF realized just how successful the project was, they took over in 1961. The original society became just an advisor, and this completely screwed things up. One of the scientists said that it was a lengthy and unattractive trail of bickering, bitterness, and short-sightedness. They wouldn't even decide what exactly they wanted to do and whether they even want to reach the Mohole. After that, the project found the new contractor company, Brown and Root, but it was a political decision, not a scientific one. Brown and Root had no experience in deep-sea drilling at all. Poor scientists had to suffer because this company didn't understand the project's goals and how hard it is. Some scientists even quit because of how annoying that was. As a result, when they calculated how much it would actually take to reach the Mohole, it turned out to be about $1 billion by today's standards. This shocked absolutely everyone. The public was mocking them, which didn't help at all. Some articles called it Project No Hole and gave titles like How NSF Got Lost in Mohole. The final blow happened in '66. The project's most loyal supporter, Albert Thomas, passed away. Plus, the situation in Vietnam was escalating. As a result, the project was stopped after eating up tens of millions of dollars. What's even worse, this giant, impossible idea took the funding from smaller and achievable things. But it wasn't entirely for nothing. Project Mohole pioneered a new deep-sea drilling technique, which is now standard. They also inspired many new, similar, smaller ideas. And science just kept going since then. In May 2023, scientists finally achieved this dream. They actually pulled up rocks not even from the Mohole boundary, but from the mantle itself. They got them from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. So maybe one day, we'll be able to drill all the way down there.
So listen up. One day our sun will cool down and turn into a white dwarf. But this is not the worst thing for Earth. Before the star cools down, it will grow to an incredible size and arrange Ragnarok for us. Now, in case you don't know, Ragnarok is the fire apocalypse from Nordic mythology. So our star will burn down absolutely everything on our planet. But hey, don't worry, there's good news. This one day will come in 5 to 7 billion years. The bad news, though, is that almost all complex life on Earth will become extinct much sooner, maybe in 250 million years. But there's a small chance that our planet will be ruled by octopuses. Yeah, I know, this is too much news for the first few seconds. So let me break it all down for you, one thing at a time. We all hear about people destroying nature and polluting our planet. This is all true, but even without our intervention, the vast majority of living creatures on the planet will disappear, including ourselves. The reason is natural disasters and weather change. It sounds terrible, but it's not new to Earth. Scientists have found out that there have already been 5 mass extinctions. The last one happened about 65 million years ago, when dinosaurs disappeared. But life won anyway and took on many different forms. The 6th apocalypse may occur within the next 250 million years. Conditions on Earth at this time will be unsuitable for mammals because the level of carbon dioxide will be twice as high. This will happen because the sun will release 2.5% more radiation and it'll get too hot on Earth. The temperature in most parts of the planet will reach between 104 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit, and the entire land will turn into one supercontinent. In regions with high humidity, the temperature will be even higher, and of course, under such conditions, it will be difficult for people to walk in the park and play frisbee with dogs. No one will play with anyone at all. Let's hope we'll have colonized other planets by this time. Increasing solar fluxes will lead to a sharp loss of oxygen in the atmosphere. This means that in about 1 billion years, our Earth will look like the lifeless place it was about 2.5 billion years ago. That is, before the Great Oxidation event. At that time, the air was filled with methane, carbon dioxide, and other gases, and the planet was inhabited by the simplest bacteria. Some of them learned how to make oxygen from sunlight and carbon dioxide. Throughout billions of years, they made so much oxygen that it became enough for the birth of new, more complex forms of life. And it seems we will return to these prehistoric times. Now, humans can't exist in such conditions, but some complex life forms hiding in the dark depths of the ocean might be able to adapt to the changed atmosphere and become the masters of Earth. These complex life forms are octopuses. There are many species of these animals. Some live in coastal areas, while others dwell in the deep waters of seas and oceans. And some species may be able to survive and create a new civilization. But why octopuses? Because they're some of the most intelligent creatures on Earth, and probably the most intelligent creatures among all the inhabitants of the dark depths. Octopuses can use surrounding objects as tools. For example, they can wear a coconut shell for protection or shelter. In laboratories, they've used various objects to complete mazes. These animals often escape from their water tanks to visit octopuses in nearby tanks. Yes, they have high intelligence, but not in the human sense. Their intelligence is more like a computer. You see, octopuses have neurons not only inside their brains, but also inside their 8 tentacles and large eyes. It's like a big data center, and their limbs sense the environment in exceptional detail, as if they were the brain. Not only their intelligence, but also their physiological properties might help the octopus survive if the apocalypse strikes. Its body has no skeleton. It can squeeze through any hole, slip past any obstacle, and their 8 highly developed limbs allow them to intelligently interact with their surroundings. Crows can bend pieces of wire with their beaks. They can throw stones into the water to raise the water level and get food. But they only have one beak. An octopus with its tentacles has at least 8 times more possibilities. They don't have spines, so they'll most likely build a civilization not on land but underwater, where it's much more convenient to move with such a body. To build a civilization, they'll need to find cheap energy. For example, hydrothermal underwater springs or tides in coastal areas. This will be a difficult task, but it won't be the most challenging thing for creating cities. It's very difficult for them to maintain social connections. By their nature, they are loners, who usually form groups of several individuals. But this is not enough to carry out large-scale construction of underwater urban areas. Parents pass on culture, history, upbringing, and moral guidelines to their children. They spend a lot of time and effort on education. Octopuses don't do this at all. The female octopus passes away shortly after laying eggs. The male octopus has only one mating relationship in its entire life and passes away shortly after the female is fertilized. So, in a sense, octopus cubs are born orphans. It's not surprising that it's difficult for them to build social connections. Over the past 50 to 100 million years, octopuses have not developed a collective feeling, and it's difficult to imagine that it will suddenly appear in the future. Perhaps something will encourage them. Who knows? Some scientists who study octopuses have noticed that over the past 10 years, some octopus species have shown certain social skills. Some live in groups of 10 or more individuals. If humanity doesn't ruin the lives of these animals by fishing and dumping garbage into the ocean, then they have a good chance of succeeding in conquering the planet. But if they fail, then the next candidates might be nematodes, those little white worms. Well, let's hope octopuses win. They seem cuter. They also may achieve a technological breakthrough much faster than we think, because when you have 8 arms, you work much better. Imagine these octopuses leaving Earth and flying to another galaxy, where they meet us humans. Do you think we could become friends? So let's say octopuses become a highly developed civilization that builds cities in the oceans. But they, just like humans, will have to think about colonizing other planets because of the upcoming Ragnarok. The sun keeps heating up and getting bigger, don't forget. Our star is currently in the most stable phase of its life. It has been in this phase for the last 4.5 billion years. But after another 5 billion years or so, the hydrogen in its core will start running out, and then the fun will begin. As hydrogen fusion slows, the core begins to contract. As the core gets smaller, it heats up until it can kick off another round of nuclear reactions, fusing helium into heavier elements such as carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. Eventually, the sun will turn red and be so gigantic that it will swallow up Mercury, Venus, and possibly Earth. So, it may be Ragnarok not only for our planet, but for the whole solar system. No matter how tough octopuses are, they won't survive such a disaster. Earth is likely to burn down completely. Maybe it'll look like the moon, or it'll completely disappear. What will happen to the sun next? Its energy will run out sooner or later, then it will shrink to the size of Earth and turn into a white dwarf. When a star goes out, it ejects a huge amount of gas and dust. Only the cooling core remains. All those outer layers will be floating in space, forming a beautiful nebula, and our solar system will become unrecognizable. Well, in some ways, it can sound pretty sad and scary, but hey, look at the bright side. Yeah, pun intended. It's going to happen in 5 to 7 billion years, so relax. Humanity has been living on Earth for about 40,000 years. If we compress the entire history of our planet into one 24-hour day, then the history of people will be equal to 1 second. If we achieve such a development in 40,000 years, what'll happen in 100,000 years, in 1,000,000 years, in 1,000,000,000 years? It's hard to predict. So how about going to the park and enjoying the sun at its best? Yeah, bring some sunscreen.